Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to the After Maghrib Podcast. Hope your Shahr Ramadan's going good. Of course, we've obviously had a number of days now, hopefully, to get into the rhythm of things. And amongst all the craziness and the blessings of this holy month, there's always questions and requests and conversations surrounding charity. And that's really something we wanted to get into today. And obviously it's a very close discussion to our heart, but there's something closer to me today, and that's Sayed Ali Radhawi.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Alhamdulillah. We haven't been this close.
No. Close in heart and close in body as well.
Habibi.
How you doing? All good?
Alhamdulillah.
How's Ramadan going for you?
Ramadan,
how's your fast going, Sayed?
fasting, alhamdulillah, as every year we try to improve our spirituality. But inshallah, this year let's give more in terms of charity.
Yes.
That's something we all need to work on.
Absolutely. And obviously, guys, this is a big discussion, so we need a good team with us. And alhamdulillah, today we've got that. We've got Brother Salim, Qasim, assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. How you guys?
How you doing, bro?
Alhamdulillah.
Nice to see you. And Sister Mariam Hilli, making a reappearance on After Maghrib.
Indeed.
How you doing? Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Nice to have you guys back on.
Nice to be back.
This is obviously a huge conversation. Where should we start, Sid?
That's a big question. What's on your mind?
Me?
Yeah, when you think, like, for example, we spoke about we want to improve giving. It's the month of Allah, the month of giving. Mm-hmm. What's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Well, it's an interesting one. Obviously, Salim and Mariam, you guys are from the Zara Trust, and the work that the charity is doing this month is phenomenal, across the board. And that's maybe something which we can use as examples. But I think a lot of people want to ask the question, firstly, why is there such like a focus now in Ramadan? Is it capitalizing on people's spirituality and their soft-heartedness? Are you kind of taking advantage in that sense when people are feeling spiritual and joyous? Or
it's high time.
Yeah, it's peak season.
So it is a month of giving at the end of the day, and it's in the moments when we're fasting where we can really think about people who are, from vulnerable families, people who are underprivileged, who don't have what we have. Whenever we think about when the time comes for us to break our fast, we know that there's going to be a plate at the end of the, on our table. There's going to be drink for us to break our fast with. But there are families who don't have anything at all, and that's really where you start to think about people who are less fortunate than you, and that's when you do want to give back. So it's not so much as, like you said, capitalizing on people's emotions during the month, but it's a blessed month. Or why not give in a month where your rewards are multiplied?
Mm-hmm. I think also, like when you look at, to put it another way, you could say the mosques are capitalizing on people wanting to be more spiritual and wanting to be. It's not that. It's more a case of in the month of Ramadan, like, we're more spiritually inclined. We try to be the best versions of ourselves. And I think charity is a big part of that. I mean, we have traditions in Islam. I don't need to kind of number them all, but giving is a big part of being Muslim. Yeah. And so it's almost like we kind of reaffirm, and maybe it's the time when some people only give in that period. Like with fasting, we have to fast in the holy month. And we were having a conversation before. I'm not going to name names, but some people here mentioned, we don't fast as much. I'm talking about myself, by the way, not Ali Radhawi.
Why?
But
outside of Ramadan.
Outside of Ramadan. But you know what I mean? It's one of those things where it's maybe something we don't do as much of, and it's almost like the month is an invitation to do good and to be the best version of yourself. So let's make the most of that.
Ramadan being the month of giving. And, every year we always want to, as I said a bit earlier, we want to improve our spirituality. But how can we say, for example, outside of Ramadan, how can we be inclined towards giving more? Like, you working at Zara Trust, you've had ample of experience working there. Why is it different in Ramadan and outside of Ramadan? What changes us as Muslims to give more in Ramadan? And how can we, change the way that we donate or give towards charity, continue outside of the holy month?
I think, look, from personal experience,
because Ramadan is spiritual, and we feel a bit more sincere, more humble, more,
But you know what it is. I think generally attitudes towards charity are interesting, and I'll give you my own personal experience.
Okay.
So 10 years ago, I went for Arba'in for, I think, one of the first times, maybe a little bit more than 10 years ago, and we actually stayed with the Zara Trust. This is well before I worked there or anything like that. And I remember Sheikh Masumian gave a talk, about the work that the Zara Trust does, and it was still early days. And at the end, people were like, we want to make donations to the trust. And I remember whoever was taking the donations, they were like, okay, what do you want this for? Is it for orphans? Is it for widows? Is it for education? What's it about? And I promise you, I turned to someone next to me and I was like, this is all showmanship. Like, it's just going to go into a pot and they'll just do what they want with it. But they want us to feel like it's whatever.
Yeah.
And then fast forward, 10, 12 years, I'm now working at the organization.
Alhamdulillah.
And we have a projects team, we have a program team, and their role is to make sure that if someone is given money for education, it has to go towards education. And I think people, we kind of almost overlook, because in Islam, obviously, it tells us to give charity, to be charitable. We have these charities that do that. But I don't think people really understand and appreciate how much work goes into that. Right. We just look at it like, oh, people are trying to capitalize, or organizations. I don't know, what's your experience been? Because you've obviously engaged with the trust before, like when you were producing shows and things like that. How have you found it?
So I think my first introduction to the Zara Trust was a couple of years ago when we were doing live fundraising shows. Ahmed, you were in on those shows as well. Didn't have that much knowledge or experience like working with charities this close, but what was really phenomenal was actually seeing the work firsthand actually being delivered. So for example, the water wells was a big thing a couple of years ago, and people were like raising funds for water wells, and I thought, well, why not, let me put it on social media. Me and my sisters together were like, let's do a fundraiser and we'll start raising money for water wells. We did. And then I thought, okay, well, the money's gone to charity now. They'll do whatever they want with it. And that was that. Never thought back. Like you said, fast forward again a couple of months, I receive an email and it has a video of the water well that was built with my family name underneath. And I was like, wow, this thing, it's not that I doubted it, but the fact that it was then delivered to my inbox and I saw it actually, come to fruition, I was like, oh, wow, this is amazing. And it only made me more inclined to donate further to a charity that I know actually takes my money and delivers on what they said they will deliver on.
Yeah, since I had the same experience that year. So I was helping with the fundraising back then, and someone close to me, a member of my family, did the same thing. So they donated towards a water well, completely forgot about it. A couple of months later, you get a video, they're interviewing the people who are benefiting. People are using the water wells for wudu. They're using, imagine every time someone donates towards a water well, and then people are doing wudu with that water well. Every time they pray salah, you're still getting sadaqah jariyah. It's crazy, honestly, subhanallah. And I think, to be honest, when we're raising this question about like capitalizing and stuff like that, it's mainly to, I think, address concerns or questions that the community have. All right, because obviously Shahr Ramadan, we have, alhamdulillah, many Shia charities, many Shia channels talking about different charities, and then outside of that, and that's just in the UK, but obviously imagine worldwide, there's an abundance. Okay, so I think maybe people will ask that question. Well, firstly, why do we have so many charities? Okay, because there's so much choice. Why can't these charities come together and address the problems in one pot with one effort? Non-politicized and non-partisan effort to address poverty and whatever it might be. And why can't we join forces? Because obviously that's something which people have asked. We see the channels this year. We see different charities raising on different channels. And people ask those questions. What would you just kind of say to that?
There are so many charities and they're all doing wonderful things. But I feel like every charity focuses maybe on a particular aspect or is better at doing one thing over another. So it's not a case of like, it's either one or one against another. It's more about, well, what cause are you passionate about? And can that charity of your choice deliver on that passion that you have towards a particular cause?
I think there's even you have local charities in the UK, for example, that cater very much specifically for the needs of the people here. Yeah. Then you have international charities that will focus on particular countries or areas and things like that. And I think it's more a case of what appeal or what it is that appeals to you as an individual. And I mean, just out of interest for you guys, what are the kind of causes? Because I know for myself, again, before being involved in the charity sector, I know there were certain things that whenever I'd see that, I'd be like, okay, I have to give to this. What is it for you, out of curiosity?
Disaster relief, for me.
Emergency disaster relief.
Emergency disaster relief. Yeah.
Okay, but then how do you pick the charity that you give to?
That's the question.
Every charity. Yeah, the question I'm asking you.
So the first thing is,
I'm taking over this podcast.
Not all. Yeah, not all charities respond. Firstly, and respond quickly. That's the second thing. So I think it immediately filters out a number of charities. And usually in the aftermath of a disaster, you're talking about like the Turkey earthquake that happened a few weeks ago, and bombings, and obviously the attacks, for example, on the Hazara community in Afghanistan, things like that. You want to find something immediately because you're drawn, to that, and you're affected emotionally. For like at least 2 or 3 days after. And at least for me, and I'm not just saying this because you guys are here, but I've always seen ZT as like the first to respond. That's me at least. I know with Turkey that was a big thing. But yeah, in terms of how to pick, I don't really know. I think it's credibility that you develop over a number of years with a particular charity that then helps you make that decision.
It's interesting you say that, because we were having a conversation about this earlier, and we were saying that when it comes to charitable organizations, you almost have to have some sort of affiliation with either someone or something in that organization. There's a massive trust thing. And once you know someone and you can trust them, then you know that your funds are safe in their hands, basically. I think that plays a massive role in.
Does that put pressure on you guys? Sorry, Sayed. I'm just going to ask. Does that put pressure on you guys as representatives of the charity, that if you know that credibility comes when people know you and trust you, does that not put pressure on you in your personal lives? Like, I have to rep this charity everywhere I go.
I wouldn't say pressure, but there is always that thing, like people have questions, like they do about the channel, for example, even when they're talking about Ahlul Bayt TV or whatever it is, any organization, if you're on the screen, if you've been involved in any capacity, they're going to ask questions, and you're seen as like the spokesperson.
How's the channel doing?
How's the channel doing, right?
Every 2 days I get that question.
But the thing is, people that left the channel 7 years ago still get that same question. But it's one of those things where I think, like, in some way the reputation of any organization, any business is tied down to the individuals.
That's true.
But I think, like, talking about like disaster relief, again, I'm a big cynic, and I think every example I give will just show how cynical I was. I would always see, for example, the Zara Trust at the forefront, like the first charity to respond. And I was like, how do these guys, like, it's impossible. How can they, be everywhere, there straight away? But then take the Syria and Turkey earthquake. So again, now being on the inside, we get to see what happens. So within 24 hours, we deployed a rapid needs assessment team with 2 doctors who went out to an earthquake.
12 doctors.
12 on day one?
12 doctors.
Okay,
I don't know what, but 12 doctors.
Wow.
And the footage that was coming through as well, like, it was filtering. We were on a group.
It was within like 24 hours.
Are these doctors volunteers, by the way?
They were volunteers.
So this is unpaid work.
And by the way, we were the first, I have to mention, we were the first Shia charity to respond. And that's a massive thing.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
But like what I was saying is that I think, sometimes it's, because within charity, it's very easy. As I said, I'm a pure skeptic, right? So even like when we're like, oh, we're doing this, I'm like, okay, are we really? And then like within 5 hours, there's pictures and there's reports and there's all this stuff.
Well, that's the beauty of technology and the world we live in now.
Yeah,
you can see the effects of where your money is going, and it's beautiful.
Another thing that was actually interesting this time around was hearing the reaction of our team on the ground to the response, because that's not something that you ever get to kind of feel. You see the pictures and you see the work being done, you know that aid is being delivered, and you're like, okay, kind of job done, got the money, got the funds, and we've delivered. But it's their passion and their servitude. And when they were telling us about how, for example, taking photos of the scene, it was scaring some of the victims of the earthquake, because it was kind of giving them flashbacks of what was going on. Can you imagine the darkness and then like a flashlight of a photo, and just that the feeling that they felt when they saw people's reaction to that, and people like fleeing and running away, and just for them to describe that really like hit home, and it made us actually like visualize what it is that they're actually they're putting their lives at risk, like when they're at the forefront trying to represent the organization and deliver aid. That's another thing that goes missed all the time.
And I think like when I've been to Iraq a few times with the trust in the last couple of years, and I always try and take families, donors, anyone that's there, I'm like, come out, let's deliver some aid together, because when you actually experience it firsthand, like I remember one time we were doing some filming for some marketing work, and I was trying to make sure that we have the right angles and we got the right shot and this and that. And I remember it was winter time, so it was very cold, and we delivered some rugs and like water heaters, and then actual like physical heaters as well. And I remember when we left, like the woman said thank you, and she was speaking in Arabic. I couldn't understand much of what she was saying, but that for me, that moment where we kind of locked eyes and she said thank you, that she was so genuine and so thankful. And it kind of just made me realize that actually, forget the filming, like we're actually helping somebody, and it makes it so much more real. And I think the fundamental issue in my head for people here is that when they give money to the charity, that's the end of the process.
Yeah.
But that's the beginning for us. When you work within the sector, that's like, okay, fine, now we've got the funds. Now we have that duty of fulfilling it. And I think if people have the opportunity, whether it's locally or internationally, to volunteer or get involved with a charity and like be a part of delivering aid and being face to face with beneficiaries, you can't look at charity the same ever again.
You know, before you started ZT and before you went and let's say you went on the ground and you saw the amazing work that you guys do, did you ever question where that money is going? I'm just wondering.
In what way?
For example, let's say I've donated something towards, let me give the example of orphans or widows. You were collecting, for example, you were marketing, you were advocating for Zara Trust, but you were actually never there. But when you went on the ground, how did that make you feel to actually see that money impacting directly those people that need the most?
Like I said, I think it's...
and I think it's important for people to hear this.
Yeah. No, it's night and day. Like you can't... like honestly, the first few months, so I went out, I think after 3 months of working at the trust, and it feels like a desk job. It feels like any other job.
Yeah.
Like you're sitting there, okay, you have your analytics, you have your fundraising, you have your marketing, and I've started out in marketing, so make sure the emails go out, okay, make sure the links are all in order and it looks nice.
You guys have amazing marketing, but I'm constantly bombarded. Zara Trust, everywhere.
But no, so that was it, right?
Yeah.
And then as soon as you hit the ground, and even like for example being at the Mokib, so you know during Arba'in we have the Zara Trust Mokib, Pole 470. Most I think Western Zuwar pretty much stop it there.
Yeah. Amazing. I've been there
The
many
chicken
times.
is
Amazing
level,
place,
honestly.
and good hospitality.
Yeah, we try, but like
Yeah, it's really
even
good.
being there, and the last couple of years I've been fortunate enough to spend like a week there. It's just the pictures don't do it justice, and it's like Arba'in itself. And I know you guys have spoken about that on the podcast, but like you can't, for people that have never been for Arba'in, you can't describe it to them to make it make sense. It's the same with this, like working, serving at the Mokib, volunteering, helping distribute aid. Like I can't put it into, I can't do it justice. So I can't give you like a concrete answer, but it's something people have to experience.
When you think about the industry at large, whether you're talking about non-Muslim charities or even non-Shia charities or even within our own community, there's a lot of governance that comes with your industry and a lot of compliance issues and things to take into consideration. Over the last 5 or 10 years, there have been numerous scandals for like a number of charities which have been wrongfully taking people's money for themselves. Okay, obviously the Charity Commission, the government, various bodies do the sort of compliance and they do the scrutiny on charities to avoid the risk of corruption and misallocation of funds. Internally, firstly, how would you respond to someone? Because obviously in this month, like I said, people, like Sayed Ali said, are being bombarded with charity like nudges online, WhatsApp forwards and broadcasts, live appeals on TV, sponsored ads on YouTube. Like everywhere you go, you see charity, give us money, give us money. So for you guys, how would you respond to someone who says these charities are taking our money for their own pocket? This is a payout season for them. It's about bonuses and paychecks and admin fees and stuff like that. Because obviously, I'll be very honest, I've been in conversations in the last few years where people will say, you're sitting having tea with a group of people and they'll start saying, do you know this charity takes this much money from you and that charity takes less, so give to these guys because they charge less. Do you see what I mean? I think obviously it's a difficult conversation to have, but how do you approach that internally and how do you respond to people?
I'd say, can you please read the 72-page annual report that we just finished making?
Okay.
Because it literally sheds light on all the different projects that we have. It's impossible, absolutely impossible, for us to be able to deliver on all these projects, and there are so many projects that we deliver on if we were taking people's money. In short, that everything is on Charity Commission website, so you can actually go on there and you'll see how transparent the funds are in terms of expenditure, in terms of income and what's coming in and what's going out. So it's not a secret, it's something that is visibly there that you can see for yourself.
But I think also like the Charity Commission regulation and everything else, that's not the gold standard of compliance. That's like the bare minimum.
Yeah, and that's a non-Islamic standard of compliance.
Exactly, right.
And all of that.
So we have our own internal processes to make sure that spending, we have a whole like purchase order form system for spending, so that I can't just buy something and say, oh yeah, you guys need to pay me because I did this. I have to get it approved.
It needs to be justified.
Everything has to be justified. And I think that, I mean, you know, we're here to kind of talk about all these things. Marketing is another thing, right?
Yeah.
There has to be budgets for things like marketing.
Of course.
And I think that's something that people need to appreciate, that, you know, if we're talking about aiding as many people as possible, you need to be able to, you know, even if it's...
Reach everyone.
If it's paying for MailChimp or ads on Facebook or whatever it might be. But I think that then comes down to like finding that middle ground.
Yeah.
Because, you know, there are some charities, for example, that spend crazy amounts on marketing, and the percentage of money that reaches beneficiaries is quite minimal. Now, they grow at a rapid scale, but then how many people are benefiting in that short run? I don't know. Maybe in the long run they'll have more legs. So that's like a whole thing that, you know, you have to figure out. But this stuff is important.
Have you worked with other charities?
I've not worked inside another charity, but I've worked alongside other charities.
Okay.
If that makes sense. Why?
I don't have a following question. I just wanted to see. That's all.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, cool. There's a number of kind of like a couple of misconceptions I want to throw at you guys about the industry at large. Okay,
Yeah.
The first one is about scholars. Okay, and maraja and stuff like that. Why should I give to an independent private charity when I can give directly to a scholar who's got his own charity, or give, for example, my sadaqah, and that can be distributed accordingly?
It's a fair enough question. The thing is, you have to also remember that not every single person necessarily wants to give their money to a scholar. There are a lot of people who are not, you know, who are also mistrusting of scholars.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's something for everyone really when it comes to charity. With regards to like, why not? Like, if you are someone who doesn't mind giving your money to a scholar, it comes down to the passion you have for the cause, and would that scholar be able to deliver on that particular cause that you're interested in? Because you mentioned earlier that for you, for example, it's emergency response. That might not be something that a scholar might be able to deliver on, right? Because that's something that's quite, you know, critical.
Yeah.
They might be able to feed orphans and widows, for example, and if that's where your passion lies and that's where the cause that you want to fund, then so be it. So really, it's really important to understand what the actual donor is wanting from this journey of donation.
I think I've also like, so I've been to centres and talked about charity. And in a lot of centres, because they're fundraising for their own mosque or whatever else, often they're like, okay, you can speak, but you can't fundraise.
Okay.
And that's, so you would think, okay, how do you do that, right? It's very...
difficult.
No, it's very easy. It's very straightforward, because what you do is you talk about the projects that we're doing. And my ask, or the thing I say at the end is, look, I'm not here to fundraise for the Zara Trust. Obviously, we'd welcome your donations. I'm not going to say no to that. But fundamentally, I think the important thing is that people remember that there is a lot of need in the world. And whether you give to the Zara Trust or any other charity, just be mindful of our brothers and sisters around the world and give.
Yeah.
I think for me, you know, if Zara Trust is a charity that I feel comfortable with, okay, give there. If it's another charity, give to the other charity. But you know, again, coming back to this whole like monopolization and competition between charities, fundamentally, as long as charities are run well and are doing good work, I just want people to give to charity. I think that's the main thing that matters here.
I'm glad you made that point, actually, because when you look at like the needs assessment in various parts of the world, whether it's like war-torn zones or, you know, regions of conflict or natural disasters, the need is so high that no one charity alone can actually meet those needs.
Yeah.
And the approaches are very different from each charity. Some people have like microfinance projects, for example. Some people deal with short term, so food and water and emergency medical type stuff. Others work on longer term, housing, education,
Sustainability.
Yes, long term sustainability. I think, you know, just from my own experience at the Zoho Trust, like we try to kind of do a bit of everything, because you can't have, there's no point kind of doing the longer term stuff if people are malnourished and people can't afford to send their kids to get an education. And there's no point building these amazing schools and having that infrastructure. But at the same time, we don't want to be handing out food parcels, you know, till the day of judgment. We want to try and get people out of those cycles, out of the cycle of poverty. And I think also that there's always a question around local charities versus international. And I think one of the things to bear in mind, if you look at the UK, for example, the UK system is not perfect by any means. There are obviously charities like Sufra and Hand on Heart that deal with local issues. But I would argue that generally speaking, the infrastructure in the developing world needs development essentially. Like it's nowhere near the level that we have here. So while we have an NHS, for example, there isn't that medical support abroad. So in the countries that we operate, they have nobody. They have no money. You know, we're talking about a lot of female-led households in societies where women cannot work, or it's a lot more difficult for women to work. So they have no means of getting a livelihood. Whereas in the UK, we don't have that problem for argument's sake. I'm not saying it's any easier here than it is there, but just...
Because here we have some sort of government help to step in. Like,
exactly. There is an infrastructure here. And again, it's not perfect and people do struggle. I'm not trying to belittle the struggle here. But in some of the places we operate, I mean, you know, the Syria and Turkey earthquake, the reason why all those buildings fell was because they didn't have good structures. The foundations were weak because there's no regulation around that, or people were cutting corners, right? And that's something that we do have here, like with Grenfell, for example, but I would say to a lesser extent.
Cladding.
You remember the whole cladding situation, but more often than not, things are built well here, and we don't have those kind of crises.
And at the end of the day, we're part of a global community, and we have a responsibility to help our brothers and sisters wherever they are, whether it's a local need or whether it's an international need. Like, we have to take some sort of, you know, humanitarian responsibility, see what issues are arising around the world. We have to be mindful of what's going on around the world.
Because obviously at the end of the day, we know about the importance of neighbours in Islam and the local responsibility, but also we know Surah Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that the one who does not wake up in the morning and is concerned about the state of the ummah is not from us. So there's a responsibility on us on both ends, the kind of locally and internationally. Sayed, I want to ask you, this reminds me of a conversation we had a couple of weeks ago about kind of the cost of living crisis here and like the issues people are going through. How do you feel about that? Because obviously people are struggling right now, and obviously we're having this conversation now.
I think the fact people are struggling, I think is a good thing, by the way, because we can sort of relate to the struggles that are happening around the world. And if we feel like we can't make ends meet, we are you know, getting a taste of what people's daily reality is. I think that's
a very small taste. It
is a small taste, because the fact we still have a roof over our head, whereas many don't. We still have food. And I think just before the podcast, Sister Maria mentioned that, you know, during Ramadan, we know that there's a plate on our table for iftar. For many, that is not there. So the fact that we can sort of get a glimpse of what actually is life for them, I think that should allow us to give more. And, you know, we have many narrations, alhamdulillah, being from the Shia Ahl al-Bayt. We have Imam al-Sadiq, we have Imam al-Rida, and Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. They all say that when you give in charity, actually increases your risk, both wealth and health. Doesn't always ultimately mean wealth.
You know what I always find interesting about that? Because even I have that personal reflection. If I've, you know, end of the month is coming and bank balance is looking a bit low, I'm thinking maybe I should give. But I think what I suffer with, at least sometimes, is like that lack of trust in Allah. So you know, God has promised us that you get more risk. God has promised us that your wealth grows, but we don't have that conviction. You know, like you say
tawakkul.
You give the narrations, but then actually when it comes to like pulling out
your money
your
where
wallet,
You get scared.
Yeah.
And I've always tried. You look scared now.
I've experienced this twice.
Do you know what's going to happen?
I can say
Salim and Mariam are going to pitch us a fundraiser.
I've got a card machine. I've got a card machine with me right now. No, but honestly,
what's the contactless limit?
Honestly, the thing is, I think like, so I always try when I'm at a center, for example, and there's a fund, you know, someone's there with a table, whatever charity it is, I always try and give. Firstly, because I've worked behind the table and I know how difficult it is. But also, I think like, you know, if I can give, I should. And more often than not, we can, but I don't know why we hold ourselves back.
To be honest,
I'm talking about myself here before anyone else.
And to be honest,
can I just mention, just to say, you know, if we are actually living in a cost of living crisis, I think we can also plan the way we handle our finances much better. You know, if we're having daily coffees, you know, cut 2 or 3 a week, you know, you'll save a couple of pounds, and that could either go towards your house bills, whatever it is, or go towards charity. So I think cost of living, there's a whole conversation.
And to be honest, it comes down to your niyyah as well, and quality over quantity in Islam. And we live in a world where you've got apps, like there's a ZT app, right? So you can donate at the tip of your finger. You could be on like the bus or on the train and thinking like, you know what, probably I should give money to this Jumu'ah, for example, and I'll do it when I get home. But now we can do it anytime, any place. Like you pull out your phone. If you're listening to this conversation, guys, like why not take advantage? Like literally, honestly, it's very simple.
It's for your own protection, right?
Yeah.
Like we grew up with like pay sadaqah before
Every
you
day.
leave the house because you'll be protected, and then it's reeks. I don't do that sometimes, and then when the days that I do, I literally get protected. I'm like, wow.
Alhamdulillah.
Power of sadaqah.
I think
Honestly.
your driving is a bit erratic and
Let's not mention the 2 accidents I've had this
It's
week.
like bala, and then you mentioned car accidents. You know how much times I've been like near miss situations on like
1 inch.
that thing helped. Something I've done.
Yeah.
You know.
But you know, like one of the nicest things I've experienced working at the trust, we have a few people that call up on a regular basis, multiple times a week, to donate, because they're not as tech savvy or whatever else. They donate £1, 2, 3, £4 over the phone. We take their details and we take the donations,
nice.
and it's the same people.
It's really nice.
And it's so beautiful, right? That like people are that bothered, and again, it's always the older generation. I think our generation, yeah, fine, we have apps and we're more tech savvy, but I feel like generally, and this is like almost a different conversation, but generally like the way the community is moving, we're not like our parents' generation. So you look at, you know, volunteering at the mosque, for example, it's still the older generation that are doing most of the hard work. And slowly you get 1 or 2 younger people, but we haven't got that same spirit of generosity and giving that our fathers and our forefathers had. I don't know why that is. I mean, that's a different topic. We do that next week. I'm down.
I like that. I like it. No, obviously, there's a lot to take into account. Obviously, this is where we're now kind of mid-ish Ramadan, and we've got a couple of weeks left. And the next week, or especially coming week, is going to be defining for our coming year, inshallah, and for the fate of us and for everyone watching. Exactly. So how do we approach that? Kind of from not just from the giving perspective, but even from reflection, thinking about, like you said, Salim, thinking about the plight of people around the world. Where would you guys kind of advise people to begin in terms of like making these next few days really count?
This is what I feel. I was going to say I'm not in a position to necessarily answer that.
I say that like it's actually quite sad in a way, because when you start approaching the Nights of Destiny, Layali Qadr, you know that Shahr Ramadan is coming to an end. And it's almost like your opportunities for giving are also like, you know, dwindling away. Throughout this month, you've had ample opportunity to give, and the Nights of Destiny, we know how powerful they are and the ability they have to change our destiny. And the importance of giving in those nights is multiplied, I don't know, by thousands, right? So it's definitely a time to consider how you're going to spend your money in those nights and what your money can actually do for people around the world. Again, when it comes to donating, it really depends on what you're passionate about, what your cause is. But if, for example, you really want to see, self-sustainability projects happening around the world, I was thinking about this earlier, and I was like, I really want to mention this, but you know, the Setoto project, and just seeing like there's these kind of microfinancing projects where you're able to fund, a project like the Setoto project, where a young boy who's an orphan, for example, has a whole family to support, is able to, through your donations, have a whole livelihood, out of something that you've donated forever, basically, for the rest for however long the Setoto lives, but for however long, and he's able to now provide for his own family, and that's through your donation. So imagine you did that, for example, on Layali Qadr. Like, just think about the amount of rewards you'd be getting to know that you're actually providing for someone who's providing for a family.
And these microfinance projects are wild. So like with something like this, I think you're looking at about $2,000 or $1,500 for one of these rickshaws. And that's given to someone for free, and they pay back on a monthly basis over 10 months or 12 months. Once the money has come back, so once that 2,000 has come back, then a new rickshaw is bought and given to another person. Wow. So your one donation
that's an amazing
has it's an awesome project. This is something we've just launched in the last year, in fact.
I don't think I've heard any other charity do this way.
No,
I personally myself.
The thing is, I saw it firsthand, and the smile, the happiness, the joy on that the recipient of that rickshaw.
Yeah,
it's just something you can't.
Because you're giving them the opportunity for them not to extend their hands.
Exactly.
So
for them to be independent.
Yeah.
It's wild. And I think to answer what Ahmed was saying, like for me personally, the nights of Qadr, and I hope my WhatsApp doesn't blow up after this, but when people send me messages around these nights asking for donations, I don't say no. So please don't message me in these nights. But you know what I mean? Like,
donate to After Maghrib.
Viewers all know.
After Maghrib.
Priorities After Maghrib. Doesn't matter anymore.
No, but even so, literally, even if it's £5, even £1,
right,
I would always give, because I'm like and also, you know, this maybe my tawakkul like switch kicks in for like 6 nights or 3 nights in the year. But I just feel like, you know, if there's any time to give for me personally, it's in these nights.
Yeah.
And do you know what? if we can show rahmah to each other for even a short period of time, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that this night is more great than 1,000 nights, for example, then Allah will be merciful to us. You know, we're displaying mercy to His creation. You know that there's a guy who asked the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, "What is Islam?" And the Holy Prophet replied by saying, "Islam is to worship the Creator and to be beneficial to the creation. And the most beneficial people are those who are most beneficial to His creation." Like, if you can be beneficial to Allah's creation, you've conquered, or you've cracked the code of Islam, in my opinion. And Allah, surely in Nights of Destiny, Allah's gonna display His rahmah to us in return for what we've hopefully done for someone else. And like you said, it could be anything. You know, like we've had wafat of Bibi Khadija, Salamullahi alayha, and obviously she gave her wealth to Islam, and wiladat of Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam, who gave his wealth twice away in his life to Islam, and obviously the shahadat of Abu al-Aytam coming up. And you know, like surely there's no coincidence in these 3 major occasions in this holy month when it comes to like being charitable and being giving. Like, it must show that the importance of charity in this holy month is as important as fasting in many cases, because it's about community spirit, in my opinion at least. So yeah, I mean, it's why do we give iftars, and why do we do all these things, and we give we give boxes of dates to our neighbors and all these things? It's because this is a month where we are meant to be giving, like our hearts are soft. So I think it just makes sense that this is the right time.
Oh, well, and we have that example of Lady Fatima Zahra sallallahu alayha, when the poor and the needy, they were fasting.
Yeah.
And the poor and needy would come to the house of Fatima Zahra, and they will ask for food. And Fatima Zahra will give, all that she's prepared to those in need. And I think it was about 3 days.
Yeah.
And that's something not easy. It's not something that anyone can do. And being Ramadan, I just remember that story. I paraphrased it, but it just reminded me how the importance of, taking care of others. And this is what the month is all about. We take care of others, Allah will take care of us. And I think that's something we should always bear in mind throughout our stage. But I've had 2 questions, knowing that you two are on this podcast today.
Here it comes.
I've always wanted to know. You don't have to answer
related
it.
to the topic, or is it just random?
No, it's something I wasn't sure when to ask
I don't know
it,
where this is going.
but now is the time. It's, what is the most common excuse for someone when you, for example, approach them, do you want to contribute, do you want to donate towards this cause? What's the reason for saying, I can't?
People are sick of my broadcast messages.
No.
That's pretty much it.
Not you personally, but generically.
I don't have money.
Or I've given already.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think people have their reasons. They don't like. Our job is to try and raise funds for the beneficiaries to do our work. I don't ever take it personally, obviously, but like people have their reasons. But usually it's, I don't have my card on me, I don't have any cash. But then we have our card machine. They're like, I'm in a rush. There's always reasons, but it is what it is.
I feel like people have to be inspired to donate. It's really important.
I think that's the other thing. Like, it's I don't want to. I think even the way that we collect charity needs to be kind of honourable. So it's not about shaking people down. And even I've had this as well, where like I've literally been in situations where someone's holding a card machine and they know me. They're Salim, come here. And then another guy will be like, put 50. And then like, I don't even want to give £50. I don't even know what it's for, but I kind of feel pressured into doing it.
Yeah.
I usually don't. I reduce it to
Well, speaking of card machines, I've been to like some centres and I've seen charities actually have like a kiosk sort of thing where there's a card machine, and that's the beauty of it, that you can do it whenever you feel like giving. It's unforced, so it's like more sincere.
But you see, what I find interesting is some people like to do it like that. It's like there's times when I'll see a card machine and I'll be feeling generous.
Because a lot want to give in secret and in private.
But then interestingly, some people want to be asked.
Yeah.
They want to be like, oh, please, you're as if they're doing you a favor.
Yeah.
But actually, obviously, it's kind of the other way around.
Do you think like they want some sort of recognition? Or...
Yeah,
I'm sure we can't judge.
I think
their
everyone's got
intention.
their own like personal journey when it comes to donations. Everyone's different. Some people need to feel inspired and need to feel connected to a project, and other people just feel like, you know what, this is Jaffa Bella. Like, let me just donate because it might ward off evil.
For me, when I give charity, if I'm being really honest, it's probably to address my own insecurities, or like to try and make myself feel better. And like I might give because I feel like I remember the 15th Sha'ban Amal, like you guys put out this poster, and I was thinking like, I'm gonna give to ZT because ZT told me what to do in the Amal, so I might as well give to them. But like for me, it's kind of like I gave because, in a way, I don't know if it's selfish or not, but I think a lot of people might have that, and like you said, Mariam, people give for different reasons, either because they don't want bala and they don't want difficulties, or because they want that recognition, or because they want to feel like their money's going to use, and these are the right people who are experts in that industry that can distribute the money well, or someone like me who might feel like I've got like a personal struggle or like a personal insecurity, and this might like what's the word I'm looking for? Ease your
burdens.
Yeah, kind of like firefight my own opinion of myself. Do you see what I mean? And I think this is, it goes back to that conversation about rahmah and compassion, that these are the days where Allah is merciful on us, and if we can show mercy elsewhere, we'll have ease in our heart.
I'll say one thing though, after slighting some people, overwhelmingly my experience over the last couple of years with the trust I've been awestruck by the generosity of people. So like people that I know, for example, in my network will reach out to me and give very open-handedly. Not that I've even asked them, but they know that I work at the trust and they want to facilitate, getting work done for a particular project or in a particular area. And like even, I mean, the earthquake as an example, like I remember, every other day I'd message Mary and be like, another person's just given 5,000, 3,000.
Wow,
and it's amazing. And I think like, when you see it most with things like these kind of tragedies where it's a, very apparent and real situation, but it's heartwarming, I guess, to be able to actually see that. Because people, usually the experience when these things happen is you'll see the news and the destruction and everything else, but you don't.
That's because we're reacting.
We are.
Because we're actually seeing it. And I just thought of this right now. The fact that we're not actually continuously giving charity if it's not natural disasters and stuff.
Yeah.
Because we forget that
true.
such people exist.
That's true.
We forget there's orphans. We forget there's widows. And leads me to my second question.
Oh, yeah.
Why do charities, not ZT in particular, but why do charities in general always focus on widows and orphans? Is it because it touches the heart? Because I know I've got 2 girls now. And whenever I hear a story about an orphan or something, I am deeply connected. Why is it those 2 in particular, widows and orphans, that charities focus on?
So,
whereas we know there's other places that the money can go towards.
Well, we know that there's so many narrations about like the Prophet and orphans, and like the most famous one, like me and the orphan are like this, the Prophet, but also seeing them up close, orphans and widows, and just realizing that they don't have like the infrastructure that we have here when we're comfortable and we've got our families and everything's kind of intact. Over there, you've got a woman who's having to fend for herself, probably never worked a day in her life, young children that she's had to support on her own, as well as the trauma, because we forget the trauma side of things. We forget like the mental health, the depression and the PTSD that comes with the trauma of losing a husband or losing a loved one. So I think for a lot of people as well, it's a really close cause to their heart, because women and children are the most vulnerable like members of society at the end of the day.
For me, when I see members of our community pass away, like the wider community in the UK, especially younger people, when they have young kids, and I know people who have passed away with kids, less than 3 years old or whatever, like I'm like, my heart breaks for them, but they have family, they have everything. And then when you just think about the fact that these people don't have the safety, security that others have, it, like, how can you not? Do you know what I mean? I think it's for me, it's as simple as that.
Like, it's enough to lose the breadwinner in your family, but then to not be able to fend for yourself afterwards.
But it's as Mariam said, like the trauma element, the mental part of it is enough difficulty. Then imagine not being able to sustain a life.
SubhanAllah. SubhanAllah. the last one of the last, if not the last question for you guys is, can I ask you what your like, what pulls you towards, or what cause pulls you towards giving? Because you asked me, I said disaster relief. Said you didn't say anything.
He doesn't give.
No, ask me that again. Sorry.
What pulls your heart? So obviously we talked about water, we talked about disaster relief, we talked about widows and orphans.
It's the orphans.
Orphans, yeah.
Honestly, it's the orphans. Every time I see, alhamdulillah, may your marketing increase when it comes to orphans. So all the charities out there.
I mean,
because it goes back to the same point that we forget. There's actually orphans out there who, unfortunately, wallah, they have nothing to eat.
To bed hungry in these days.
So forget food aside for a second. They can't live a normal childhood. Yani they're growing up. They could be 5-6 years old and they're doing a man's job that's 30-40 years old, trying to bring money to the home so they can put food on the table. Now I've seen videos, alhamdulillah, social media has allowed us to witness directly what is happening with these people, and their lives, my friend, and to everyone listening and watching, it's a life we don't want to be involved in terms of we don't want to live that life. And for me, knowing, as I mentioned earlier, I got 2 girls, wallah, I just imagine if that's my daughter. I go crazy. Even the simple thing like water, we know how important water is. And especially again, I'm going to mention as Shia, the importance of water, and Karbala and Ashura, it plays something with the heart. So whenever we hear, for example, someone wants to build a water wall, we should just put Ali Asghar, we should just put Abba Abdullah, all these things that we have strong connection with, just give as much as we can.
Yeah, 100%.
Honestly. But I have a final question as well.
Are we asking this first?
I want to find out what
I want to find out what Salim's thing is.
So, I think for the longest time, it's a bit boring, I'll be honest, but I've always given where most needed. So usually on websites, you have that kind of where most needed option. And the reason for that is because I think like sometimes our motivations, like you're mentioning, it's very personal. So if it's orphan specifically, that's what your what personally affects you. But I personally believe that charities are best placed to allocate funds where needed. So actually maybe, in a particular period, there's enough money for the orphans and widows, but there's a different project like education. And I think, so my approach personally, as I said, it's a bit dry. It's not as emotive as yours.
No, it's amazing.
But
you can adapt to any situation.
Because I think that way, and I would always encourage people to give, to the kind of where most needed pot, because that then enables the charities to spend the funds appropriately.
And they'll know where it can be best allocated.
What about you, Mariam?
Fair enough.
He stole my answer. No, joking. I was going to say that, but then I remembered that I have been touched by like individual projects, especially medical aid related projects. So again, like I have to mention the annual report, but inside there's a burn victim, a little boy, an 8-year-old boy. When he was 2, the room caught fire from a heater, and he like suffered like severe burn injuries all over his body. And he was told by his teacher in school a couple of years later that he should stay at home because he was scaring the other kids.
Oh my God.
This boy has undergone 5 surgeries with a lot more to come. But from the 5 surgeries that he's undergone, thanks to donations that we've received, his quality of life has definitely improved, and he now lives a normal life, goes to school, is like getting on with it. So the quality of his life has drastically improved. Another example is baby Mehdi, which you'll remember from a couple of years ago. Again, this baby, it was a matter of life and death. One needle. Yes, it's an expensive injection, but that one needle, again, people came forward, they donated, and this boy is now living his life normally. Like we're sponsoring his education, he's getting on with it. So to impact individuals and to impact their life, it's not the same as like, maybe donating towards like, feeding 200 people, feeding thousands of people, but it's impacting the quality of that one person's life. That's really powerful.
Can I just say on baby Mehdi, so this case came about very early on.
Where can we read on this baby Mehdi story? Where can we find it? Is there like an article?
It will be in the annual report from last year.
But
because
there is another baby actually who's got the similar problem. She's called baby Mariam at the moment that we are raising funds for. Again, it's a matter of life and death for this child.
I'll give you a brief overview. So spinal muscular atrophy is what he has. So it's a degenerative muscle disorder. I'm not a doctor, but I hope this is all accurate enough. But essentially, the chances of living beyond the age of 2 are slim to none. And baby Mahdi, when that case came to us, he was about, I think, 6 or 7 months old. And a month or two in, I went to Iraq, and we met baby Mahdi's parents and him, and we held this baby in our arms.
Allah.
And at this point, without the injection, he's dying. Within 2 years, he's dying. And again, like, you know, you see the Just Giving page and the WhatsApp messages and whatever, but when you hold a child and you know that the chance of them or their life is literally dependent on you and your work, there's nothing you can do but try and get this done.
I want to actually add on to that there was someone who basically was contacted via social media about the case of baby Mehdi. So this girl, she went to a number of organizations and said, would you be able to help this baby, you know, it's come to light, this is the situation. A lot of charities said, sorry, we donate towards orphans, we help orphans, we can't really like put all our money towards helping this one child. The only charity that actually stepped forward and said, no, well, we want to do something about this, actually. We want to change this baby's life and we actually want to save his life, was Zara Trust. And I have to say, it was from that point forward that I thought, wow, like they're willing to do things differently. They're willing to put someone's life, like to value it that much.
That's like direct impact.
MashaAllah.
Because you know, you can give
Making it emotional.
generically to orphans in general, and you just don't know what's happening. But to hear stories like this, inshallah, you know, we can do more. Those listening, those watching, even yourself, Ahmed, and me, to give towards these causes. Yani, it's important.
Even us, by the way, I'm going to go home and do it.
Yeah, man.
I'm trying to enlighten the moment, but you've
honestly.
Khalas, I'm finished.
No, but I mean, we said disaster relief, orphans and widows, where most needed, individual cases. And these are all things that Zara Trust does amongst much more. And, you know, I think that's enough of a reason for us to reflect on this. And guys, to remember that Zara Trust has been working with Ahlul Bayt TV for a number of years and has been working with us as individuals and so many others from the community for so many years, and the work they're doing is like amazing, mashallah, second to none in a lot of cases. So there's 2 things I want you guys to do, or 3 things. 1 is to follow the work of Zara Trust, especially this holy month. 2 is to pick up your phone and donate. So easy, like we're talking about. You can do it on the app, you can do it on the website. Anything else I'm missing? On the live shows this Ramadan.
I think
that's
pretty
it.
much everything, yeah.
And 3, subscribe to After Maghrib. Okay, that's the most important.
Why did you kill it? You were doing so well.
Nah, bro. It's got to be done.
It's part of the
Smash
charity.
that like button,
You
smash
can
that
take
donate
charity.
button as well. But yeah, thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
It means
Thanks
a
for
lot
having us.
to have sevens like you on this podcast.
I did have one question though.
Yeah,
Go on.
This is the final one, honestly. Yani, we, you know, a bit early on in the conversation, Ahmed mentioned this thing where there is some sort of mistrust.
yeah.
And I think it's important I ask this question. And inshallah, you two can, you know, ease my mind on this matter, because many people ask this question, and I used to have this thought process many, many years ago. And that is, for example, why is there hardly any transparency of where your money is going? Now, I'm not talking about generically. Like, for me to give more, I would rather go do that directly. I'll be very honest. Like, I know, for example, my mom's going to Iraq, as an example. I'll give her the money, and she's doing the impact directly.
What, if you don't mind me asking, what would she do with it exactly?
She would go directly and give it to those who actually need it. So she'll ensure that they will have so I'm not advertising my mom here. But she will go and ensure behind the scenes, my mom behind the scenes, she would go and make sure, for example, that there is the biha is going to this orphan family. There is this, things is happening. I know what's happening. So I'm comfortable in giving this money. Whereas charities, they just say, for example, there are orphans, give us money.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Can I answer?
Wait, I haven't finished. No.
No question yet.
No, the question hasn't come. Is that why can we trust Zahra Trust to do this job? How can we trust Zahra Trust to deliver on this, where we can put our minds at ease and give more, go deeper in our pockets? Because there's a difference. We can give £5, but why can we give? How can we change that £5 to £50, £500, £5,000, rather than us doing it directly once a year, whereas we know Zahra Trust can deliver on this continuously?
So let me give
Does
you
that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
So let me give you an example. So this is before I accepted a job at Zara Trust.
Okay.
I went out to Iraq just to scope the organization a little bit and see how they operate.
I'm just going to pause you. because I sort of didn't finish my point. Is that fine? Is that fine? Sorry, Maria. The reason why I asked this is because I have done this before to other charities. Okay? And it wasn't orphan related, but it was like, for example, building water wells, education, continuous help in farming. But all we saw was one water well, and that's it. And they were still asking for money. So the water well's being built, but they haven't built nothing else for the last 5 years, but they're still taking money for water wells that they're not building. That's when we lose that trust. But how can we trust Zara Trust?
Okay, so I'll go back to my story now. I went out to Iraq and I went to just scope the organisation. I went to a Husseiniya where people were staying because it was Arba'in. And I saw just women lying everywhere. And I was told to go ask for a particular woman. I don't know if I should mention her by name. I was asked to go to look for this particular woman. She's a woman who basically carries out needs assessment for people in the local area. And I thought, like, what kind of needs assessment are they really going to carry out?
Like a nurse sort of thing?
No, she's just a woman, a volunteer. Doesn't get paid. She's nothing like that. She's just a woman who wants to give back. So I go and meet her. Again, like he said, very skeptical about the whole thing. Like, what conversation am I really going to have with this woman? Woman's educated, can speak English as well. She starts telling me about how they carry out needs assessment for the widows and the orphans, the widow families, like female-led households. They have like a file on every single family that they take care of. And not just that, what each family is like received, what their situation is. Do they still need to be part of the system? Have they become a little bit more independent?
Just checks and balances.
It's basically they're assessed almost every single year. So this needs assessment thing was actually legit. And for her to know the families on a personal level, and aside from the fact that they're receiving, donations or aid or whatever it is that they need support with, these women are invited as part of like a mental well-being program every single week. They're asked to take part in festivities and celebrations and, like to make something and bring something with them. They're part of a community. Yeah. And when I saw that and I saw the passion this woman had, by the way, again, like I said, she's not an employee. She's just doing all of this out of her own love for giving back. I was actually like literally breath taken away by the whole situation, just to see and I really want to highlight the work that these people do. It's easy for us, like Salim said, we're in the office, so you just getting on with our day jobs, but these people who are on the ground actually delivering the aid and helping impact people's lives in such a personal way. That's something that it's not easy to come by.
I think just to briefly add on to that, I think, so like, for example, you talk about Qurbani and things like that. So my mum has a hookup in Kenya. And so like every time it comes to one of these seasons, she's like, oh, we're doing this there. Do you want to do it? Whatever. And she has that setup. I think not everyone has access to a network or a framework like that, right? That's number one. Secondly, what often happens, and this is like very recently, I had a conversation with somebody who was on a WhatsApp, on like a large, WhatsApp group, and someone from Yemen was also on that WhatsApp group, and they reached out and messaged the brother and was like, listen, I need help. Can you help me? Blah, blah, blah. We have all of these needs. They asked us to kind of find out from our local team in Yemen what the situation is, whatever. This individual had messaged many people asking for support. Now, I'm not, it might be a legitimate need, but what happens if I give money and then you give money and then Ahmed and Mariam, we all give money independently? Right now, he's got 4 times the money that he needed for that one item, right? There's no accountability, there's no due diligence, right? And that's a big part of it. So I remember...
never thought of it that way.
Yeah, and one of the trips that I went on, we met some... These were like orphan households, so there were no parents in the picture, it was just orphans, but the oldest kids were like 18, 19. At times there were like 7, 8 kids in the house, and literally like you got a 19-year-old as the head of the house who's breadwinner and also trying to do everything. But the orphans generally don't get good jobs because people know they're orphans, they exploit them, they pay them less. Sadly, it's a whole thing. But what I found really interesting from our perspective, this was very early on at my time with the Zara Trust. I was talking to Abu Ali, the kind of local rep, and I was like, what do we do for this family? He said, well, these families, they get their educational support from one organization, they get their housing and rent support from a different organization. We just support them with gifts, Eid, and things like that. That's what we do, because there's no point in doubling up. For us, it's not about taking pictures of these kids and be like, oh, we're doing everything for them. But that level of understanding, and one of the things that I love when I go on the ground and I see our local teams, how they interact with the families. Like, you know, we say that they're local experts. They know, like, you know, we're going into random, like, villages, and there are, you know, houses that you can barely call houses. Firstly, they know how to get there without sat-nav, without anything. You're on a side street of a side street, whatever. And then they know the families intimately. They know the names of all the children. They know all their ailments and everything else they're dealing with.
Yeah.
Having that level of understanding and knowledge, and I think being able to scale, this is the problem. And I've spoken to people who've started up their own charities as well, or doing stuff in like an ad hoc manner. There's a limit that you reach. Until you get to a point where you need an infrastructure, you need a system. So we have, like, you know, fingerprints of all the widows that come in, and we have all the information there. Wow. I can show you after this podcast. I can literally show you.
Show me after Maghrib.
But you know what I mean. So that whole complexity, when you want to scale and be able to help as many people as the Zara Trust does on an annual basis, you need an infrastructure. Is what I'd say. But bless the mothers, both yours and mine, that are doing things like that.
Every mother.
And every mother. But you know what I mean. Like it all counts. I think, you know, that's the main thing that
every little helps.
Every little helps.
Ahsant. Thank you so much, guys. It has been a pleasure. Obviously, we pray, inshallah, your amal are accepted. Everyone at home, pray for us when you're breaking your fast tomorrow, and support the Zara Trust. They're doing incredible work. And yeah, thank you very much.
Follow the After Maghrib podcast.
Follow, hit that subscribe button, and obviously follow ZT as well.
And donate to Zara Trust.
Donate. And yeah, you know how it is, guys. We appreciate subscriptions. Obviously, it's been an amazing month so far, and obviously more to come. So stay tuned. Thank you for your time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.